Hi everyone, welcome to LOKI'S. So this basically started as a joke on Twitter. So here we are, by popular demand, I give you the evolution of Loki's hair, a very serious and necessary analysis. Seriously, I'm not kidding when I say this is a topic that many people are actually asking questions about all the time on Twitter. For example, is the Loki hair a wig or extensions, or is it Tom Hiddleston's real hair? Why does his hair look different in the series? Why does his hairline look different in the series? Does Loki use magic to style his hair? And of course, the question that just keeps coming back again and again, why is Loki's hair so greasy? So in this very ambitious video, I am going to try and answer all of these questions. Starting with, is the Loki hair Tom Hiddleston's real hair? I've noticed a lot of people who were wondering whether the Loki hair was Tom Hiddleston's real hair or a wig. And the answer is, it totally depends on which of his turns as Loki you're talking about. So since I know some people will not have the patience to watch the whole video, here is a very quick summary. Ready? Thor 2011, real hair. The Avengers 2012, real hair and extensions. The Dark World 2013, full wig. Thor Ragnarok 2017, full wig. Avengers Infinity War 2018, full wig. Avengers Endgame 2019, full wig. Loki Season 1 2021, real hair. And if you're wondering where I got this information from, let's say I probably spend a bit too much time on the internet, and I probably spend a bit too much time watching Tom Hiddleston's interviews on the internet. But seriously, I will give you my sources in the description. Trust me, the information is accurate. So now let's dig deeper into this chronology, because a quick summary clearly isn't enough to do justice to this very important topic. So first, I'm going to have a more detailed look at every one of Loki's looks throughout the movies and the series. I'm not going to give you a ranking, because actually, I like all of them for different reasons. So I'll say what I like and what I don't like about each look, but no ranking. Thor. In the first Thor film, they used Tom's real hair, but when I say real hair, I only mean it was not a wig. Because if you know Tom Hiddleston outside of Marvel, you will probably know that his natural hair is blonde and curly, and at the time it looked like this. This is a picture shared recently by Chris Hemsworth on Instagram of one of their early meetings when they were preparing for the movie. Actually, as far as I know, the last project that Tom did before filming Thor was Wallander, the series about the Swedish detective played by Kenneth Branagh. And you can see in season 2 that his hair was getting quite long because he was probably growing it for Thor. Then obviously for the film, they straightened his hair and they dyed it black. And you can also see from the interviews that he gave at the time that it was indeed his real hair. Here, his hair is back to its natural wavy texture, but it's still black. What I like about this Loki hair is that it has a very Disney Prince vibe, which is in keeping with Loki's general prettiness in this film, in fact. It's slicked back and classy and already has quite a lot of hair gel in it, but it does not look too greasy. It also moves nicely during the fight scenes, which is one of the main advantages of real hair over wigs. Note that this is also the only film in which they actually plucked his eyebrows, which I personally think is a crime. But it does make him look very young, very pretty, and even quite innocent. And it's still better than whatever they did to poor Chris Hemsworth's eyebrows. The Avengers. In the Avengers, Tom used his real hair again, but this time they had to add in extensions to create one of Loki's most iconic look, which the fans often call the Christmas tree hair, because of its very layered, spiky shape, which makes it look like a Christmas tree. This time the hair is a lot more greasy. It looks like it's full of hair gel to keep the spiky style in place. They probably decided that Loki needed longer hair to signify that he had grown and changed, and to make him look more like a man and less like a very young prince. You can see from interviews that were filmed at the time that Tom had dyed his hair black, but it clearly wasn't as long as in the movie. There is one picture from the set that shows Tom's hair on set. Here it is dyed black and straightened, but it's clearly not long enough for the look that they wanted in the movie. The reason was that he had starred in 3 other films between Thor and the Avengers: War Horse, Midnight in Paris, and The Deep Blue Sea, And all of these films required very short hair because they were all set between World War I and the end of World War II, a time period when long hair for men was not in fashion, especially not for soldiers. And he played a soldier in War Horse and the next soldier in The Deep Blue Sea. So what they did in order to give Loki his iconic hairstyle was that they added extensions and blended them with his real hair. He explained it several times, for example, in this clip.
Serious hair.
That's the source of all my power.
And I think that
Yeah.
you actually had to wear more hair product than I do on a daily basis.
It took me an hour to get my hair ready.
Only an hour? Baby,
Only
you
an
got
hour.
nothing on me.
Really?
But this is all yours, right?
This is mine, but for Loki, the front bit, well, it was all dyed black, and then the hairline, my very slowly receding hairline, is mine, and then they clipped a sort of a wig in from about there, and pulled it back. So
Well,
it was
it's
all
quite-
blended into itself.
So this look is kind of divisive among the fans because it's really extra, but personally I really love it. It's iconic, it's kind of funny, it's original, and it makes him look very much like the drama queen that he is, but also more grown up and more menacing than the Disney prince hair in Thor, I think. It also moves quite well, even though the extensions are a bit stiff compared to natural hair, and of course it's so weighed down by product that it is necessarily a bit stiff. But it allows him to introduce the awesome dramatic hair flips that later became one of Loki's trademark moves. Thor: The Dark World. The Dark World is the beginning of a long period during which Tom wore full wigs to play Loki. Probably because over these years he kept his own hair quite short, either because of his roles or just for personal convenience. So normally I really don't like wigs, I think they almost never look good. But this one is a very rare instance of a wig that I think looks fantastic. Just like everything in this movie, really. People criticize it a lot, but from an aesthetic point of view, the sets and the costumes are all gorgeous, and I'd say the same about the hair and makeup. Thor also looks the best he's ever looked, in my opinion, in that film, and in this case it's probably because they did not use a wig on him. They actually used Chris's real hair with extensions. It has to be said that Loki's hair constitutes a bit of a continuity error. The hair is longer than in the Avengers, it's clearly not as layered, it's no longer styled in the Christmas tree hairstyle, even though he's supposed to arrive directly from the end of the previous film, at least from what I understand. Initially I thought he might have spent some time in the dungeons, and that might explain why the hair is unstyled and longer, but apparently not, so probably a bit of a continuity mistake. In my opinion, this wig is really pretty and not as greasy as the other wigs in other movies. Maybe because Loki is in prison during that time, during half of that movie, and he has no access to his hair gel, I don't know. It's also the longest hair Loki's had in any of the films, and personally I think that length looks really good. One of the things I particularly like is how natural the sideburns look. The hairline looks a little artificial and it's also a little fuller than his real hairline, but the sideburns really look very natural. There aren't many hair flips in this movie, but there's a lot of hair blowing in the wind, and honestly the wig moves very nicely. Sometimes it does look a little stiff, not like real hair, but sometimes it also looks really, really good. Of course, one cannot mention Loki's hair in the Dark World without mentioning the other wig, which is the one that's known as Loki's prison hair. And that one triggered many reactions, fan arts and jokes when the trailer was released. So this is supposed to represent Loki when he's feeling so low that he cannot even be bothered to groom his hair. And it's also the first time that we clearly see that Loki's natural hair is actually not straight at all, it's wavy or curly. So that's kind of a big deal. The prison hair symbolizes Loki showing himself without any filter, completely dropping down his facade of self-confidence and accepting to be vulnerable in front of Thor, which is a very, very rare instance. Personally, I like it. I think it looks quite good, actually. It's not combed back, it's not as severe as his usual look, so it's a nice change, and I think it looks great anyway. Overall, I'd say this is probably my favorite Loki hair from the movies, maybe my second favorite compared to the series, I'm not sure. Thor Ragnarok. The look from Thor Ragnarok is often quoted by fans as their favorite, and is often highly ranked in these articles that you can find online that had fun trying to rank Loki's wigs. It's just a little bit shorter than the wig from the Dark World, but I think the length is really perfect. Another thing that is nice about the Ragnarok wig is that it kind of combines Loki's naturally wavy curly hair with his slick back look. This could be seen as a sign that he's becoming more comfortable with himself, which would make sense because Ragnarok is the first film that doesn't have Loki going through some kind of existential crisis or traumatic experience. Or at least it's not framed as such, because discovering that you had an evil sister and seeing your home destroyed could be seen as dramatic. However, personally, I don't like it as much as the one from the Dark World, mostly because I find the looks to be very, very greasy most of the time, and also I find them to be very inconsistent in the styling of the wig from one scene to another. I'm not even sure if it's one wig or several wigs, actually. In the very first scene, Loki's hair looks like naturally wavy hair weighed down by too much product. Then you have this scene in which he wears this all-black suit that is a huge fan favourite. But regarding his hair, I'd say it may be the worst Loki hair ever. It looks absolutely awful, probably the greasiest it's ever looked, and it's so full of product that it's almost straight. But immediately after, he's sent through a portal by Doctor Strange, and his hair suddenly becomes way less greasy, and it has well-defined soft waves of the kind that you cannot really get naturally, but only with an iron, like these. Trust me, I know. So I guess we just have to assume that Doctor Strange's portal magically washed and styled Loki's hair. I don't know. And this kind of inconsistency continues throughout the film. For example, see how greasy his hair looks in the fight scene as he and Thor get to the elevator. But during the Get Help discussion in the elevator, we're back to the cleaner, soft waves, which actually look the most like Tom's real hair in the series. And then once they are out of the elevator, it is yet another style with lots of gel and the hair separated in kind of twisted locks that look like snakes. It's almost like Medusa hair, especially when he's on the floor. And I'd say it's actually quite fitting, it's quite on brand for Loki to have hair that looks like snakes. But first, it really looks fake, you can really see it's a wig. And second, it's not consistent because a few seconds before that, he had different hair. Another thing I don't like much about the Ragnarok wig is that the hairline, in my opinion, looks very fake. And in particular, I don't like these big sideburns that Loki never used to have in previous movies. Loki never has sideburns when Tom uses his natural hair. And here, I just think they contribute to making the whole hairline look very fake and they make the wig very obvious. So I'm not a big fan of this. One of the cool things about the Ragnarok wig, however, is that it did give us a number of really cool dramatic hair flips. And I love the hair flips because they really combine the best things about Loki, his hair and his drama queen behavior. So basically Loki's wavy hair in Ragnarok is really quite pretty and it's probably a nice way to signify that he has become more accepting of who he is, but it's not my favorite because I find the hairline way too fake, the styling very inconsistent and often way too greasy as well. The wig itself is very nice though, and I think it actually looks very good in this interview in which Tom, who is supposed to speak in character as Loki, actually pretends to get offended when the interviewer suggests that it's not actually his real hair.
That is fake hair or... Wow, so rude. This is my own hair. It just comes in here and insults my appearance.
Loki, I'm sorry.
It's rough,
but
man.
we're
It's
just
rough.
playing a game, right?
It's rough being Loki.
Game between chumps.
Avengers Infinity War. Now, I will be quick about the next two entries because Loki has very little screen time in them. The Infinity War wig seems to be pretty much the same as the wavy wig from Ragnarok. I don't know if they used the same wig or if it's a very similar one. It still has the very fake hairline and the big sideburns, which I do not like much. However, they went with what was probably the nicest style from Ragnarok, the soft waves, not too greasy. And Loki actually did look really pretty in the 5 minutes or so of screen time that he actually got in that film. Avengers Endgame. The wig from Avengers Endgame was supposed to replicate the famous Christmas tree hair from the Avengers. I'm not sure that was simply because Tom's hair was too short, because he kind of grew his hair out over the year 2017. He had very short hair in March during the promo for Skull Island, but then at the San Diego Comic-Con in July, he had longer hair, and by the end of the year, it was really quite long. And apparently filming for Avengers Endgame went on for many months in 2017, and I do not know when he filmed his scenes. So maybe his hair was too short, maybe he didn't want to dye his hair black again, or maybe he just didn't want to bother with extensions and the wig was easier. In any case, the hairline obviously looks a bit fake compared to the original look, but I think the wig does a pretty good job at replicating the Christmas tree look. At least it doesn't seem too jarring to me. And finally, the Loki series. Now we come to the Loki series, which was the first time since the very first Thor movie that Tom Hiddleston actually used his own hair, no wigs, no extensions, to play Loki. But compared to the first Thor movie, he had to grow his hair out a lot more because the look is not the same. It probably helped that he was starring in a play called Betrayal for all of 2019 and that he was allowed to sport longish hair in that play. He started growing his hair out even more as the end of the Betrayal run on Broadway was approaching, and some fans began to speculate that he was planning to play Loki with his own hair. And that was confirmed when he posted a video of a failed attempt at a jump while doing physical prep for Loki in late January 2020. Then they started filming, but as you probably know, they had to stop for 8 months because of the pandemic. Tom occasionally appeared in some online events, and the last time we saw him with the Loki hair was for the online launch of WandaVision in mid-January 2020. So basically Tom ended up being stuck with the Loki hair for over a year, which I think is pretty funny, even though the reasons for it were clearly not funny. Now, was it worth it? Personally, I think it really was. My only complaint about Tom's hair in the Loki series is that it's not quite long enough to match Loki's signature style. The result is that there are continuity issues, in particular in the desert scene that is supposed to immediately follow Avengers Endgame. Not only has Loki's hair become suddenly curly, but it's also clearly shorter than it was in Endgame. It does not even reach his shoulders. Even allowing for the fact that curly hair appears shorter, it's still a continuity problem. I'm still not sure why they didn't at least try to straighten his hair, as they did in this very short addition to the original Endgame sequence. And as they did for a deleted scene, as we can see from the Assemble documentary released last week, in which he appeared in his Avengers costume in Stark Tower with a hairstyle that matched the Christmas tree hair much better than the look he had in the desert scene. So this remains a bit of a mystery to me, why they didn't try to make it look more like the hair in Endgame. And you will also notice that Loki's hair tends to change length throughout the series, which is probably explained by the long delay in shooting because of COVID. That actually allowed Tom to grow his hair more to almost match the length of the Loki wig in Ragnarok. But they probably still kept some of the scene that had been filmed before the break, so you can see that his hair was shorter in some scenes. It's a bit confusing sometimes. Still, in spite of all this, I would say that Loki's hair in the series is probably my favorite Loki hair of all. First, because it's all real, it does not have the problem of a fake hairline or fake sideburns that look a bit ugly. It's also far less greasy than any of the previous looks, even when it is come back to recreate something that resembles Loki's signature look. The fact that it's real hair means that it's far less stiff and it moves way more naturally. It also allows for more varied hairstyles, and personally I think that Loki's best look is actually not the rather severe look when it's combed straight back, but when his hair is brushed a little to the side like this, when it falls on the side of his face, I find it a lot more flattering. Of course, some people have complained that his hair didn't look good and was too messy, but this clearly is a choice, in my opinion, a choice that was made for the series. They kept Tom Hiddleston's natural curly hair and did not straighten it. Maybe also for reasons of convenience, I don't know. But the result is that the hair often looks quite chaotic, which in my opinion is perfectly on brand for Loki. They also used this to distinguish him from Sylvie, who is much more organized and careful, and she ties her hair up before fighting in order to keep it out of the way, which is something that we never ever see Loki do, of course. Tom Hiddleston, however, does tie his hair, unlike Loki, as we saw in that scene from the Assemble documentary. So can we hope for Loki with a man bun in season 2? That would be real character growth. We would miss the hair flips though. Precisely. To finish this review of all the Loki hairstyles, I'd like to point out another reason why I think the series has the best Loki hair, and it is the dramatic hair flips. Unlike wigs that can come off, this hair allows for a huge number of dramatic hair flips, which no one in their right mind could possibly complain about. By the way, you can find compilations of all Loki hair flips from the series on YouTube. I'd put the link in the description. You're welcome. So now that we're done with this very scholarly and very essential chronological analysis, I'm going to deal with the other questions more quickly. One thing that keeps being commented upon online, sometimes in a mean way actually, is Tom Hiddleston's hairline. Why has Tom Hiddleston's hairline changed? So people sometimes point out that he's got a very peculiar hairline, which is true. Sometimes they claim that he's going bald, or that his hairline has been receding dramatically, and that he should have worn a wig or stuff like that. And I wonder if it's not just due to the fact that since 2013 they've been used to seeing him with wigs, and therefore fake hairlines that are actually a bit fuller than his real hairline. So maybe they just are comparing his actual hairline with fake ones. Because if you go back all the way to Thor and the Avengers, you can see that his hairline hasn't really changed that much. Yes, maybe it has receded a little, which wouldn't be surprising in 10 years. He's 40 years old now, but really, over 10 years it is not very spectacular, I think. It's true that some of the Loki posters really haven't been kind to Tom in that regard though, and the slicked back look really emphasizes the hairline even more. But Tom Hiddleston himself seems to be okay with this. He actually joked about this back in 2012.
The hairline, my very slowly receding hairline, is mine.
Richard E. Grant, who played classic Loki or older Loki, also mentioned that he and Tom used to joke that they had the same hairline, which is true in fact. So apparently Tom is quite comfortable with this, and personally I think his hair looks great and I don't see why this is such a big deal. Does Loki use magic to style his hair? So that transition in the Dark World from the prison scene to the escape scene raises another question, which is, how does Loki actually straighten his hair to get his signature look? I've always found it very funny that the film moved directly from this scene to that scene, and we never get to see how Loki actually found the time to get his stylish armor back on and to do his hair so that it is straight and neatly combed back again. To begin with, it's never made very clear what Loki's real appearance is supposed to be in the first place when he's not using illusions. And we know he can conjure clothes, he can even shapeshift. So we could expect that maybe he uses magic to change into new clothes and also to do his hair. There's this one scene from the series that suggests that he can actually do that because we see him drying his hair with magic. But I would also really love to see a scene in which Thor breaks Loki out of prison and Loki insists to be given an hour to get changed and do his hair, because I just think that would have been hilarious. In the series, the fact that he cannot use magic inside the TVA could also explain why his hair is messy and looks unkempt compared to his look in the Avengers, because if he uses magic to style it, then he cannot use it. And then of course it might seem strange that Loki does not try to go back to his usual more controlled look as soon as he leaves the TVA and can use his magic again. But I think this might be deliberate, in the same way that he sticks with the TVA outfit throughout the series, even though he could technically conjure some new clothes if he wanted, and he sticks to that not very stylish outfit compared to what he usually wears. So I think there might be a message here about Loki having moved past this need to dress to impress and maybe not caring that much about what he looks like, and the lack of attention to his messy hair might be connected to that too. Finally, another unanswered question is, if Loki can use magic to style his hair, then why does he need to use so much product on it? Why does his hair always look so greasy? First, there's one thing I'd like to point out. People often complain about Loki's hair being greasy and they assume that he doesn't wash his hair. So clearly we never had any explanation on this, so this is just my headcanon. But in my opinion, for a character who is as vain as Loki and as conscious of his appearance, not washing his hair would be very out of character. So I don't think he's dirty. I think he washes his hair, but then he uses a ton of hair gel or oil or whatever it is that he uses in a desperate attempt to try and tame it.
A desperate attempt at control.
Actually, one of the answers that was given by Tom Hiddleston as to why his hair was so greasy in the Avengers was that apparently he did not want to look too pretty, which I think we can all agree he completely failed at in spite of the greasy hair. My favorite fan theory on this, though, is that he's around Thor a lot, and that Thor, being the god of thunder, is always surrounded by static electricity, which messes up Loki's hair. and therefore he has to use lots of gel to keep it in place. I know this has no basis whatsoever in any of the films or series, but I find it hilarious, so I like to believe that this might be the explanation. What about season 2? Now, to finish, the big question, of course, is will Tom Hiddleston grow his hair back for Loki season 2? Now, we know for sure that we will have a season 2. He still had his Loki hair back in mid-January, which also triggered some rumors that he might actually be filming for Doctor Strange 2, that was filming in London at the time, so I don't know. There were also people who said that there were Loki reshoots at the time, so I'm not sure why he was still keeping his Loki hair at the time, even though officially Loki had wrapped, it was over. So I'm not sure what to make of that. What I know is that around February he cut his hair and gradually went back to his natural color. We saw that for the first time in the Betrayal live event. And until mid-July he was filming for another project called The Essex Serpent, which takes place in the Victorian era, and long hair was probably not very compatible with that. Still, he's managed to keep it quite long, a bit like he'd done during the Betrayal era. So I'd say if filming is set to happen sometime in January as they originally planned, or maybe even later, I don't know, he probably has time to grow it back and use his hair again for season 2. And personally, I really hope that he does. So what do you think? Which one of Loki's looks is your favorite? Do you prefer the Ragnarok wig, the Dark World wig? Do you like the Christmas tree hair, or do you find it ridiculous? Do you prefer Tom's real hair? Do you think he was right to use his real hair in the series, or do you think he should go back to the wigs? Do you hope he's going to grow it back for season 2? Let me know in the comments. And I'll see you again for actual analysis of the Loki series this time. Bye bye!